The US government right now is holding 328,000 Bitcoin, making it the largest state holder of Bitcoin on Earth. BlackRock bought $269 million worth in a single day. See, the smart money has already moved, but there is a part of this story nobody's telling you about what happens to people who buy Bitcoin the wrong way when everything breaks. Check this out.
Bitcoin hit $126,000 in October 2025. Right now it's around 71,000, down 43% from the all-time high. The headlines say crypto winter. The charts look ugly. People who bought near the top are watching their portfolio bleed and wondering if they made a mistake. Now measure it with a different ruler. Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater, the largest hedge fund in the world, published an essay on April 9th. 9 days ago. In it, he noted the dollar has fallen 45% against Bitcoin since the prior summer. Not Bitcoin rising against the dollar falling against Bitcoin. The distinction matters because if the ruler you're using to measure is shrinking, and every video in this series has shown that it is, then the number on the screen isn't telling you what you think it's telling you. Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, $11.6 trillion under management, the largest asset manager in human history, called Bitcoin an asset of fear. His words. Said, if you're frightened about debasement or political instability, you should take consolation in an instrument called Bitcoin. Said it could reach $700,000 per coin if sovereign wealth funds allocate 2 to 5% of their portfolios. That's not a crypto influencer. That's the man sitting at the center of global institutional capital. The US government holds 328,000 Bitcoin, more than any other nation on earth, seized from criminals, now designated a strategic national reserve asset by executive order. The institution that prints the dollars losing 45% of their value against Bitcoin by Dalio's own measure, is holding Bitcoin as the hedge against its own currency. The asset is right. The macro thesis is confirmed, not by a YouTube channel, by the largest hedge fund, the largest asset manager, and the federal government of the United States. Every video in this series, the petrodollar, the debt spiral, the stagflation, the four horsemen, every one is a chapter in the dollar losing its structural foundation. Bitcoin was designed for exactly this chapter, but there's a part of this story that almost nobody is covering. And it's the part that actually determines whether being right about Bitcoin makes you money or costs you everything. The debasement trade is running, it's institutional, the dollar's structural demand base is retreating, foreign central bank holdings at the Fed at their lowest since 2012. The petrodollar recycling loop broken by arithmetic. The 10-year treasury yield rising during a war instead of falling. The bond market no longer behaving as a safe haven. Into that environment, Bitcoin has a fixed supply, 21 million coins, ever. It can't be printed, it can't be debased, it can't be inflated away by a committee vote. Every dollar the Fed creates, every treasury sold at a weak auction, every transaction that bypasses SWIFT through Enbridge, each one is a structural case for holding an asset outside the fiat system. That's why institutional capital arrived. BlackRock's IBIT became the fastest ETF in history to reach major AUM milestones. The total US spot Bitcoin ETF market hit approximately $92 billion. This isn't retail enthusiasm. This is the largest pools of capital on Earth, repositioning because the managers running them arrived at the same conclusion Dalio published 9 days ago. The monetary order is changing, and the assets priced inside that order are repricing with it. BlackRock isn't experimenting. Their BITL tokenized treasury fund manages $2.85 billion, the largest tokenized fund in the world. They're building infrastructure for a system they believe is replacing the one that exists. The debasement trade isn't speculative, it's institutional, it's sovereign, it's confirmed by the people who manage the most money on Earth. Now, the hidden story. Turkey, April 2021. The lira was in free fall. Turkish citizens did exactly what the macro thesis says to do. They bought Bitcoin to escape currency debasement. Hundreds of thousands of them. Same thesis Dalio's describing right now. Same logic Think is using. The asset was right, the timing was right, the macro call was correct. They held their Bitcoin on Thodex, Turkey's largest crypto exchange. On April 20th, trading halted. The CEO, Faruk Fatih Ozer, disappeared, flew to Albania with user funds. 400,000 users locked out. Not because Bitcoin failed, because the platform holding it failed. Interpol issued a red notice. Ozer was eventually arrested. 400,000 people who saw the debasement coming and lost everything because of how they held it. Lebanon, 2019 through 2020, the banking system collapsed. Banks stopped allowing withdrawals, not temporarily, permanently for many depositors. The lira lost the majority of its value. Dollar-denominated accounts, frozen. People who had money in the bank could not access their own money. Lebanese citizens who held Bitcoin and controlled their own private keys, a hardware wallet, a seed phrase, their own custody, accessed their funds, moved them.
Hey, real quick, sorry to jump in. If you've ever thought about buying cryptocurrency like XRP, Ethereum, Bitcoin, or any of the altcoins, do yourself a favor. I put together 2 courses, the Bitcoin XRP 101 course and the Crypto Security course. I put them together for one low price so that you don't lose money from scammers screwing something up. I want you to learn how to build accounts safely, how to transfer safely and confidently. And this is even for people that have been into crypto for years. And it shows you so much and can save you so much, which makes you a whole lot more. All right, with that being said, let's get back down to the video.
Converted them, got out. Lebanese citizens who held Bitcoin through third-party platforms faced the same institutional freeze they were trying to escape. Same asset, same crisis, different custody method. Argentina, ongoing. Multiple banking crises in living memory. The 2001 Corralito, where the government literally froze every bank account in the country. The 2018 peso collapse. Capital controls limiting dollar purchases to $200 per month. Argentine citizens who held Bitcoin in their own custody bypassed every capital control, moved value across borders. Argentina now has 22 to 23% crypto adoption, among the highest in the world. That number wasn't built on speculation. It was built on the lived experience of watching institutions fail. 3 countries, 3 currency crises, 3 populations that made the right macro call. In every case, the variable that separated the people who preserved their wealth from the people who lost it was not which asset they bought. It was the custody method. Here are the facts about how the US institutional Bitcoin market is currently structured. The vast majority of US Bitcoin ETF assets are custodied at a single company, Coinbase. That's not a criticism, it's the documented structure. Coinbase had the regulatory standing, the institutional relationships, and the infrastructure when the ETF window opened. They won the business. BlackRock's IBIT prospectus names Anchorage as an additional available custodian. No current plans to move assets there. Morgan Stanley launched its Bitcoin ETF using Coinbase Custody Trust Company. Coinbase received conditional approval for its OCC National Trust Bank Charter on April 2nd. Morgan Stanley has its own OCC charter pending. Until it arrives, the assets are structured through Coinbase. An ETF holder owns shares of a fund that owns Bitcoin. They do not own Bitcoin directly. Between the holder and the Bitcoin sits a fund structure, a custodian, a brokerage, and a settlement system. In normal market conditions, that architecture works smoothly. The question every viewer needs to think through for themselves is whether the conditions they bought Bitcoin for, the debasement, the institutional instability, are normal conditions. A holder who controls their own private key can move their Bitcoin anywhere at any time, regardless of what's happening at any exchange, any platform, or any regulatory agency. No approval required. In Turkey, the people who kept their Bitcoin were the ones holding their own keys. In Lebanon, the same. In Argentina, the same. The pattern is documented across 3 countries, 3 crises, and 3 separate years. It's not theoretical. It's the historical record of what happens during the conditions that make Bitcoin most valuable. Now, the reasons people don't hold Bitcoin. because being honest about this matters. It crashed from 126 to 71,000. That's the most common objection right now. But Dawio measured the dollar losing 45% against Bitcoin in the same period. If the ruler itself is shrinking, then the price in dollars isn't measuring what most people think it's measuring. The dollar was backed by gold until 1971. Then it was backed by oil. That arrangement is fracturing in real time. Enbridge processing real oil transactions in yuan. Foreign treasury holdings at their lowest since 2012. The bond market refusing to act as a safe haven. The dollar is backed by trust. The data on that trust is moving in one direction. The government holds 328,000 of them as a strategic reserve. Governments don't typically ban their own reserve assets. It's too volatile. That one's real. Bitcoin dropped close to 2% alongside equities on April 7th, while gold rose. In acute stress, Bitcoin still trades like a risk asset, not a safe haven. Gold has 5,000 years of monetary precedent. Dalio calls gold the safest money. He calls Bitcoin a bit of Bitcoin, worth holding, but not the same category in a crisis. The volatility is real. Self-custody is complicated and risky, also real. Lose your keys and you lose your Bitcoin permanently. There's no customer service number, no password reset, no bank to call. That trade-off isn't for everyone. But here's what all of that uncertainty gets weighed against. The dollar has lost purchasing power in every single year since the Federal Reserve was established. Cumulative loss since 1913, over 96%. The structural demand that kept the dollar's decline slow and manageable, the petrodollar, the foreign buyer base, the safe haven status, is weakening simultaneously for the first time. The Fed is frozen between inflation and growth. The debt requires more borrowing to service the borrowing. The debasement isn't a prediction. It's the documented policy response. Dalio studied 48 countries over 500 years and arrived at the same conclusion. When the debt gets this large, they debase. Compare the uncertainties side by side. Then look at what the institutions are doing. Not saying, doing. 328,000 BTC in a US strategic reserve. Central banks buying gold at the fastest pace in decades. BlackRock building tokenization infrastructure. Weigh the data, study the custody history, understand what you hold, how you hold it, and what the documented record shows. Then you must plan accordingly.